Okay, we're live, but we're a little bit dark here, and I've got to get this silly light working. I've got to back up, but for some reason it stopped working. There we go. That's a little bit better. Let me just adjust the camera. How the hell is everybody? Of course, I always adjust it the wrong way. I did a live stream for the stop that. I did a video for the other channel yesterday. Come on, stop it. AI is taking over my camera for some reason. Probably something I said. Let's see if we can get it right. Will that do it? Stop it. That'll have to do. How is everybody? Um, yeah, the birthday is actually 10 days from now. It's on the 17th. But birthday month live stream. Feel free to do super chats if you want to. Happy for that. Thank you, Dealey. Thanks, Stevie Cooper. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so I got some stuff. I got a haul and I picked up some stuff at the market yesterday. I got 7 movies for $5. And I'm going to do that plus the last of my birthday haul. I'm going to be doing what vulgarly is called um, Screw, Marry, Kill with a bunch of famous celebrities. So we'll get a bit of feedback on that. I'm actually going to call it Snog, Marry, and Avoid instead because it's a little bit nicer. Hi, Evil Pixie. It's Sunny in Morecambe. So they. So it succeeded. Bring Me Sunshine has happened. Um, which is a very obscure joke to people who don't like English comedy, but that's how it is. Yeah, middle-aged geek girl isn't monitoring today. It's actually 6 in the morning and it's still dark outside because she's got a bit of insomnia. I finally got her to go to sleep, and she got to sleep. Then 3 in the morning, Luna starts bashing on the bedroom door because she was used to Sally being up at 3 in the morning because of the insomnia, and so she starts bashing the door heavily at 3 in the morning. She may make an appearance, I'm not sure. And I got up. So I've been up since 3 in the morning. I'm going back to bed after I do this live stream and catching up on sleep. Hi, Bruce. Happy birthday, one. Thank you. And Richard and Carol say happy birthday. Pre-birthday wishes for 17. Thank you. And, I always celebrate birthdays because you haven't died. It's always a good thing to celebrate. Defeating the odds is never a bad thing. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting one because our nephew Billy is coming down. He's going to be down for my birthday, or at least part of it. He flies out on my birthday, and we've got something planned for the day before because his birthday is 1 month before mine. So we're doing joint birthday things. Plus, my sister-in-law, Karen, her birthday's on the 9th, and so we're going over to Sally's parents' place on the weekend to celebrate those birthdays together. So basically, I'm getting 2 birthday celebrations. Ramsar, US 4.99. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate that. Thanks, FG. Yes, so it's a good month, apart from the fact that it's turning towards winter, which, as everybody knows, is not my jam. Hi, Franny. Thank you. And Bruce says my cat will jump on my head in bed at 6 a.m. to wake me up and feed him. Yeah, they do that. If you've seen the Superman trailer, there's a new Superman trailer for the James Gunn Superman, where Crypto does much the same thing to Superman. Um, thanks, Josh Pondo. Yeah, it, there's a lot of animals jumping on people's heads in the zeitgeist at the moment. I've been following American politics as well. The thing with Trump, apparently Bezos, Zuckerberg, and Musk have between them lost $26 billion in the last 3 days. So we do have something to celebrate. But yeah, it's going to be a tough time for everybody because of one random, possibly, allegedly tertiary syphilitic idiot. But we're not going to talk about that too much. But yeah, it's been pretty good. I did a live stream. I did a walk and talk at Laverton Market yesterday, which is going to be on the other channel. And for those of you who don't know the other channel, I'll post a link here. which is where I am putting all of my travel vlogs and my driving vlogs. I'm putting them over there. I wanted to differentiate between the movie channel and that channel because I've got a professional profile, whether I want it or not. I'm a member of the Australian Film Critics Association, and they cross promote my stuff with their stuff, and I promote their stuff as well. And so I wanted to do a clear line between movie reviewing and the other stuff that I like doing on YouTube. And so I've started that second channel. But that's fun, and it's a different kind of YouTubing than doing the movie reviews here in the house. And I kind of like that. I like having that flexibility. I'm doing one video a week there because I don't want to stress myself out. Which reminds me, Billy, my nephew, is arriving next week, which means I've got to get a couple of extra videos in the can. I've got to work out what I'm doing for that. Ah, such a busy life. Ralph says, my wife and I have been loving the travel channel. Melbourne looks beautiful. Thanks for sharing it with us. My pleasure, Ralph. It's fun. I'm going to be going up in the bush. I'm going to go to Hanging Rock, where Picnic at Hanging Rock was filmed. And I'm going to do some of the autumn colours up at Mount Macedon nearby. I've just got to work out the wherewithal of doing that. But it's only about an hour from here, so I can get up there pretty quickly. And I'm thinking about climbing Hanging Rock. And Hanging Rock has a ramp going all the way up. It's actually wheelchair friendly to go up the top of Hanging Rock. But on the other hand, I'm incredibly unfit, so we'll see how that goes. Friday says, my old cat Spot was so polite he would stand at the bedroom door and meow to ask me to get him at 3 a.m. to go and sit with him, me on the sofa, him under the table because he needs extra social space. I can see that, Friday, yeah. We're lucky we've got Jill and Luna, so they keep each other company a lot of the time. But particularly Luna, there are times when she just wants human company, and she's not reluctant to tell you that she wants human company. But that's how it goes. Yes, I'm sufficiently caffeinated at the moment, but as emergency caffeine supplies, I've got a can of Boss coffee sitting on the radiator behind me. So I'm going to have a hot can of coffee later if I need to top up during the 2 hours of this live stream. So we probably should get started with the stuff that I've got. These next three are things that I got full price. Tom says, I'd like to see a few kangaroos in your Terry Travels channel if possible. Kangaroos only turn up at dawn and dusk. They're crepuscular. So it's very hard to see kangaroos out in the wild unless you're doing an incredibly long country drive and one of them suddenly hits your car. But we'll see what we can do. I may be able to do it at the zoo. We've got 4 zoos here in Victoria, and I get free passes to all of them because I've got annual membership. I do want to do my local zoo because the elephants from Melbourne Zoo moved out to my local zoo, and we've got a big elephant enclosure, and I haven't seen that yet. So here's the first thing that I got. This is part of my birthday haul from Sal. Hundreds of beavers, which is disappointing because I thought it was an adult film, but I haven't watched it yet. I'm told it's very funny. I don't know if this has got an Australian physical media release yet. I don't think it has. I could be wrong. So I went to Bezos's site to get this one. It's really weird in a way because it's got a black cover, which gives you the implication that it's actually a 4K, whereas it's just a Blu-ray. But nonetheless, happy I got that. I'm going to watch that probably this week. Yeah, I'll talk about that later. Okay. Second one, this is a hidden gem. It stars 2 women, and it can be construed as a chick flick comedy. D. Lee says Hundreds of Beavers is excellent. Good. And it came out during the spicy cough. But it's incredibly funny, and I love it. And I like the naughtiness of this film. Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar, which stars Kristen Wiig and Anne Momolo, about these 2 middle-aged women who go to a resort holiday and thwart a bioweapon attack by an evil female kind of supervillain. It's very funny and a lot of fun, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. I saw it on streaming, I think. I was told to watch it by somebody. But yeah, this one's good. Anybody wants the digital copy? Actually, hang on. Oh, it's on DVD and Blu-ray. Anybody wants a digital copy of this, the first person to get it can have that. There's the numbers. You can freeze frame this stuff later. But if anybody wants the digital copy, go for it. Don't mind sharing because I'm not going to use it. But I'm looking forward to watching that one again because it is just such fun. I will tell you what I'm doing next week. Billy, my nephew, and I, he's 15 now, which time flies. We always go to a movie when we catch up together. We went and saw Uncharted. We saw The Creator, good science fiction movie. What else did we see? We saw a third one. We saw Late Night with the Devil together. And this time around, he sent me a message on Facebook saying, "We've got to see the Minecraft movie. I want to see that with you." So he and I, for our shared birthday thing, are going to see the Minecraft movie with Jack Black and Jason Momoa, all that kind of stuff. It's not going to be particularly my kind of movie, but we're going to review it afterwards because he's 15 now. I can put him into a YouTube video. So we're going to review that. Ramsay said I watched Hundreds of Beavers on Amazon Prime in November. It's weird, unusual, unique, very funny. Sparse dialogue, you'll give it a B plus. Fair enough. Going to go in as cold as I can. I've seen the trailer, but I'm just going to go in and enjoy the film and have a bit of fun with it. KN says, Jack Black, that's a deal breaker. Yeah, well, the thing is, it's Billy's turn to pick the movie. So if he wants to go and see the Minecraft movie, I'm going to see the Minecraft movie. We can just walk a kilometre down the road to the local and see it there. So that's exactly what we're doing. And I will review it, and he'll review it, and we'll see how we go. He's got a lot higher energy than I have. He's a teenager. So it should make for a little bit of a different video. The other thing I got, which I got with some Amazon, an Amazon gift card that I get for promoting links in my YouTube channel to various Amazon things. This one I didn't have. It's a Warner Archive Collection Blu-ray. The Return of Dr. X, which is Humphrey Bogart as a bad guy, as like an evil villain in this one. I've seen the movie years ago, but I haven't seen it lately. And I got this for free, basically. I paid a couple of bucks to cover the difference. But at the price I paid, it's pretty good. And I want to do this one for the channel anyway. So I will do that and let you know how it goes. So that's basically the birthday and Amazon haul. Richard says he could start a rival YouTube channel called Billy Talks Movies. Don't give the kid ideas. He's already got a YouTube channel where he just posts slow motion videos of Sydney suburban trains because that's his gig. Hi, Damien. You are up early again, mate. Though less early because of daylight savings in it. So it's a 2-hour time difference between you in Perth and me here in Melbourne, I think. But yeah, hi to you and Heather. So that's what I got. And even though I am going to show these on the travel channel, I will show you the things I got yesterday at the market. Hi, Ben Ed. Sally's not here at the moment. She's sleeping because she had a bout of insomnia, so I'm letting her sleep in this time. Thank you, Patrick. Happy birthday, mate. Do any single screen movie palaces still exist in Melbourne? Tom says. Yeah, the Astor, where I went and saw Cobra with Sylvester Stallone. I did a video about it. It's the only single screen that I know of left in Melbourne, and I think it's celebrating its 90th birthday soon. So it's a really old school Depression era movie house, done in Art Deco style. I love it, and I go there regularly to see the Cinemaniacs viewings. The next one they're doing is To Die For, but every month or so, a movie group called Cinemaniacs show a movie there. They have a talk about it beforehand with somebody who's very knowledgeable about the movie. And they also have a raffle where they raffle off stuff. So nice place to visit. Seen a number of movies there over the years. I saw Touch of Evil there on the big screen. I saw in 70mm with the proper lenses, The Hateful Eight when it came out. And it's like that wide. So yeah, we do have a single screeners. DBQ says, my nephews are all grown up and moved away now. Great time of watching when they were young. Yeah, it's a family tradition because one of the things I remember from my early childhood, and I've got fractured memories of that because of trauma, is my uncles Roy and John took me to see This Island Earth at the Hub Theatre in Fairfield in New South Wales, in suburban Sydney. And so when Billy was born and when he grew up old enough to take him out to the cinema, I thought I'd continue that tradition. And we're doing that. Every time we get together, we'll see a movie and we'll select them ourselves. And they're not necessarily going to be things his parents approve of. Late Night with the Devil was pretty close to the bone. But I want to keep that family tradition going, which has been going for at least 60 years now. Yeah, Damien, the Astor is a lovely cinema. I love looking at it. And they've got old school movie posters on the walls as well, like really big ones. There's one for Red Planet Mars, and there's a bunch of other ones. It's just a great place, a great vibe. And because it's heritage listed, it's going to be maintained as well. And I love the fact that it is. Let me just crack another bottle of water because this is dry work. And with the radiator on in the room, it is even drier. A bit of ASMR there for you. Yeah, so here's the stuff I picked up. Now, these cost me $5 for the whole lot. And I'm quite pleased with the haul because they only have DVDs there now. They've actually got a shop in St Albans now, and all of the Blu-rays go there. I'm going to go visit the shop and see what I can find. But these cost me $5 for these 7 movies. Just keep that in mind. First one's a DC animated one, Injustice, which I watched last night. Rock solid alternate universe Justice League movie. Good voice acting. Anson Mount plays Batman in it. Whole bunch of good voice actors in it. This is from 2021, and I enjoyed it. Again, you got to remember this cost me less than $1. Sorry, I'm burping a bit. This one I watched most of last night, and I'm not going to watch the rest of it. It's what they call an Indiana clone, starring a guy called Ivan Sergey, who looks good but is not actor with a lot of presence. Jack Hunter and the Lost Treasure of Ugarit. That one I watched part of, and it's a low class, filmed in Turkey, Indiana clone. Zami says, happy birthday. What age are you? At the moment, I'm 67. In a week, in 3 days, I'm 68. Let's see what else we got. I picked up an anime movie because the cover looked good. And I know nothing about this. It's a sword and sorcery anime called Amon Saga. No bugger all about it, but I'm willing to go in cold on this one. The back cover art looks okay. The animation looks okay there. But I know nothing about this one. But at the price, I knew I could take a punt on it and not really be out of pocket. Next one, Val Kilmer died, and that's sad because I liked Val Kilmer. There are a number of movies I like, and none of them were directed by George Lucas. And Zami says, I thought you were in my early 50s looking good, mate. Thank you. It's a genetic thing. My mother looked younger than her age as well. Well, the Greg says, cheers. Roxy has jumped up on top of the TV unit so she can see your movie haul, says Richard. Hi, Roxy. How you doing? Yeah, so I thought I'd find a Val Kilmer movie while I was there at the market. And I found the worst Val Kilmer movie. This one's about necrophilia, which is dead boring. It also stars Anne Parlow and a guy called Marcus Cantor. And it's Dead Girl. It's actually in a double pack here. But it's a bad Val Kilmer movie that I want to see from around the turn of the century. And I had heard about it when I was looking up Val Kilmer after he died. And unfortunately, I found a copy of it. So I've got that. Franny says he was good as Elvis. Did Val Kilmer play Elvis, or did he play Jim Morrison in The Doors? Janet says, happy pre-birthday. Did I see American Heart with Jeff Bridges? You don't hear much about it, but a great film. No, I haven't. Damien says he's got all the DC animated. Cool. I do like the DC animated. They're, in some ways, up till the present moment, a lot better than most of the DC live action stuff. Tom says, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is my favorite Val Kilmer movie. He and Robert Downey Jr. do very funny commentary on the DVD. Yeah, I like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I'm actually going to do a Shane Black triple feature for a future video. We're going to do Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, The Nice Guys, and I'm also going to do The Last Boy Scout, which I love. One of my favorite early 90s action films. So I'm doing those three as a triple feature in a future video. Just got to watch them again and figure out what I'm doing. Was Dead Boring a bad pun? Yes, it was, Evil Pixie. It was deliberate. It's an old joke of mine. Okay. Janet says, please watch and do a review. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I'm just writing that down in a moment. American Heart. I've got to write these down myself because Sal is still asleep. And she needs to sleep, so I'm happy about that. And the sky is just turning a bit paler in the outside the window here. Yes, Thresh Bondo, it was deliberate. The other thing I got, there's three more. I got a Taiwanese copy of Gigi, which is a problematic movie from the late 1950s, early 1960s, I'm not sure which. And it is about a young girl who's being groomed to be a courtesan. She's basically being groomed to be a sex worker in La Belle Epoque, France. And it stars Leslie Caron and Louis Jourdain and Maurice Chevalier. Not a bad movie. Vincente Minnelli directed it. But the subject matter is off. But I thought I might get a video out of it at some stage. Worst necrophilia puns, says Franny. Nobody likes a splitter. Yeah, that is the worst one. And we're off on the subject of necrophilia. Thank you, Barrett 8. Birthday's in 10 days, but we'll get there. This one got an enormous premium edition recently, but I didn't want to fork out $250 for a premium edition of a movie that's kind of okay for me. I'm a little bit too old to have hit the sweet spot of enjoying this movie in my childhood or being traumatized by this movie in my childhood. But for less than a buck, I got a widescreen 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio copy of The Neverending Story, which really, I'm kind of glad I got it. And I don't need it in any profoundly better edition, but I got that for less than a buck in an edition that's not pan and scan. So I'm a bit happy. Roger says, thought Val Kilmer nailed it in The Doors. Yeah, I saw The Doors at the cinema. And there's some very trippy moments in that. I almost had an acid flashback watching The Doors in the cinema. I've got it on Blu-ray, and I probably should rewatch it at some stage. Thresh Pondo says, they call me a sadistic bestial necrophiliac, but I think that's beating a dead horse. Yeah, we're doing necrophilia jokes now. Franny says, Gigi loved it as a kid, grew up watching it again. Oh my God, consent, bodily autonomy, people. Absolutely, that's the problem I have with it. Bent Ed says, poor heart attacks. Yeah, the horse died. It's like Old Yeller, but bigger. I should rewatch it, actually, because I haven't watched it since VHS, when it would have been pan and scan, I suppose. Damien says, I saw the stage play of Gigi, non-musical, and gives a different edge. Yeah, I think that it was based on a play or something like that. But yeah, there are a few musicals from the past that are a bit problematic, but there are some that stand up pretty well, which is surprising. Last thing I got is a Scorsese documentary, which I saw in the cinema, even though I wasn't a fan of the band. YouTube me says Ben Affleck was terrible in Gigi. Yeah, I get the joke. Yeah, so the Scorsese documentary, The Last Waltz, I got for less than $1. I know it's had an upgrade and there's been, I think, a 4K and a Blu-ray release of it, but and there's special features on here as well. It's in widescreen and it's got special features. I didn't know that. And for less than $1, I think this is a good one. This is probably the pick of the crop. Haven't watched it since I saw it in the cinema when it first came out. When I was just going to the cinema and watching anything because it was pre-VHS day, so I couldn't rent tapes. Yeah, Janet, the Scorsese documentary is great. So that's what I got all those for $7. Sorry, $5. 7 movies for $5. And I'm a bit surprised how good that all was. And yeah, at some stage, there are a couple of them that I wouldn't mind upgrading if I get the opportunity to, but they're not things I'm urgently looking to have a Blu-ray or a 4K of. But yeah, so that's yesterday. It was quite a nice day too, and had a big bowl of pho. It was wonton and pork and prawns in it. Oh, beautiful stuff. Little place called Saigon Kitchen at Laverton Trash and Treasure Market does fantastic Vietnamese street food. Friday says, I hate the idea of Funny Face. Terrible musical. Yeah, but there's that Think Pink bit in it, which I really like. I like that musical number out of Funny Face, but there's a lot of else I don't like. And I do think, though, that Paris is shot really well in that film. But yeah, I understand the dislike for it. Ken says all members of the band are gone now. I didn't know that. Yeah. YouTube me says, as for particular genre movies, I'm not interested in getting the next big thing in the fidelity. I'm fine with the quality at the time of release. Yeah, I don't mind that. There are some movies that I don't mind getting on 4K if they're not too expensive. And there are some things, of course, that I get gifted to review, which is amazing to me, but it keeps happening. And I'm happy. And the people who send it to me are happy with what I do when I review the movies. So there is that. Good morning, Peter. Happy birthday month. It's yours too. Happy birthday month, Peter. 6 a.m. here. Daylight saving is now over. Absolutely, yeah. YouTube me says, I was thinking about that last night ordering the Monster Squad. I do like the Monster Squad. I think it's an honest monster movie and it's an honest kids movie as well. Captain Laser says, hi, Terry. We talked about this before. Martin Scorsese did 5 years of classic movie reviews and Direct TV deleted them. That's because we can't have nice things when it's stuck on a streaming service. Barrett says, my month too. Ralph says, look like folks are heeding your call to subscribe. Okay, I'm going to have to check this out now. Thanks for that. I'm going to go over to my subscription thing. Do. Yeah, I did get a few more. Thank you very much, people. I am trying to get 15,000 before my birthday. I'm not sure I'm going to make it, but I'm not going to be terribly wrecked if I don't. It's just a benchmark I set myself. But I am trying to get to 15,000. I think we're about 72 away from that now, which is kind of cool. Franny says, Funny Face looks fantastic, but a sexual politics, anti-intellectualism really offends. Yeah, I've got it on Blu-ray, but I've got it on Blu-ray just for the visuals, not for the context. But I totally agree with you, Franny. It's fucked in various ways. Captain Lazy says, hate streaming for it. Physical media or you may never see it again. I don't mind streaming for certain things. I've been binging something on Tubi. I've been binging old episodes of Rowan and Martin's Laughing. Just as like a late night thing before I go to bed, I'll stream one episode of Rowan and Martin's Laughing before I go to bed, and it's kind of relaxing. Okay, Richard sent me a photo, but I'll look at it later. Roger says, saw Hello Dolly on BBC yesterday. Worth seeing for Walter Matthau's beautiful singing. Hilarious. Yeah, what I do like is if you check out Robin and the Seven Hoods, the Robin Hood version done as a gangster film by the Rat Pack, you get Peter Falk singing in that. And I love that moment in the movie. It really gets me. I love Peter Falk singing badly in that film. Thrush Potter says, Sock it to me. YouTube me says, Tubi and Broly should be wake up calls for all the overpriced streaming studios. Yeah, Broly is doing some fantastic Australian films. If you're overseas and you can get a VPN, you can go to broly.com.au, and that's Broly with an IE. And they're streaming a whole bunch of classic Australian films and horror movies and all sorts of other things. It's a nice little streaming service that Umbrella Entertainment do. And I love it. I love what it does. I've got most of the movies already, so I don't tend to use Broly. But I love it being there as a resource. Damien says, Heather's birthday month, I got her a Blu-ray copy of Inspector X. I was wondering why you bought that. Um, when it's Heather's birthday, I say happy birthday to her on Facebook. But nice one. Ramsar said, I've watched The Last Waltz several times. Fantastic historical concert with the band with lots of great guests. Like it says at the beginning, the film should be played loud. I will, allowing for the fact that Sal doesn't like loud noises. YouTube Me says, also recent releases on limited release. Yeah. And Tom says, Peter Falk sings in All the Marbles. Cool. I like Peter Falk. I mean, I haven't heard a bad thing about him as a person. And I love Peter Falk in pretty much anything I've seen him in. Just like other quality actors like Walter Matthau and Stanley Tucci and Paul Giamatti, I like in pretty much anything, even the Spider-Man movie he did. Captain Laser says, Laughing did a lot of jabs in the Vietnam War, an era when you're almost allowed an option. Yeah, I like the fact that Ronald Martin's Laughing did obscure references to things, which dodged around the censors. And the gatekeeping on American TV was enormous at the time. Harlan Ellison's book of essays, The Glass Teat and the Other Glass Teat, goes into a lot of detail about the censorship on American TV in the 1960s, and it was egregious. Just going to put my chewing gum in for a moment to clear my sinuses out. So, do people want to do a snog, marry, avoid, where I give you 3 options, and you have to decide whether you want to snog them or bonk them, marry them, or avoid them or knock them off. Franny says, my favorite Peter Falk performance is in Wings of Desire. He ad-libbed a lot of the dog. Yeah, consummate professional. Wings of Desire, I've got to find a copy of it. I don't have a physical copy of it. And I really should. I should add it to my short list because I don't have a copy of Wings of Desire. Damien says, I remember getting bubblegum cards of Laughing. Yeah, there were bubblegum cards here in Australia. YouTube Me says, the in-laws, I got caught in an accident when I was like 8 and I thought even back then it was great. Yeah, the in-laws, I haven't seen for a long time, but I should. So do people want the snog, marry, avoid lists that I've got? And you guys can decide whether you want to snog, marry, or avoid these particular people. I'm going to wait for a response on that because my connection is sometimes like 2 tin cans on a length of string. Brian says, just pick up Eureka's new Mabusa Live Blu-ray box set. Contains the 6 Mabusa films that were made in West Germany during the 60s. It's fantastic, highly recommended. I do have a bunch of those Mabusa films already. I wouldn't mind the upgrade, but I'm not hanging for it because I've still got most of them already. Friday says, get a 4K version of Wings of Desire. I picked up DVDs, give it to friends. I'll see what I can do. I'm just going to probably be later in the year if I do that. But Wings of Desire, I definitely want to add to my list because I love the film. Not so much the remake with Nicolas Cage. Was it Nicolas Cage? Don't think that was a wise choice, but then remakes of foreign language films that Hollywood does very often aren't. Hi, Cinema Dave. How you doing? Hi to you and Jesse. Thank you. So yeah, I'm going to do Snog, Marry, Avoid because I want to. Captain Laser says, "Are you going to travel to movie locations for your travel vlog?" There's not a hell of a lot of them around in my local area, and I do have a range beyond which I can't go for financial reasons. I am going to do Hanging Rock. Yeah, Friday, we don't mention the remake of Wings of Desire. So here's my first Snog, Marry, Avoid, also known as Bonk, Marry, Kill. The Three Caballeros. Donald Duck, Jose Carioca, and Panchito. Who do you snog? Who do you marry? Who do you avoid? You guys go for it, and then I'll give you my answers afterwards. 3 happy chappies and snappy serappies. Thought I'd go easy. I've got a really difficult one for the last one. Ramzar says the original In-Law starred Alan Arkin, Peter Falcon, an absolute top-notch comedy. Watched it again a couple of months ago. Got to get some grub. Enjoy the stream, boys. Thank you, YouTube me, and have a nice lot of food. DB Cooper says, I don't know 2 of them. Okay, I'm going to have to do 3 Caballeros on a Google search for you here. I'm going to save that one. So we go extra tab. Get that out of there. Extra tab. New tab. The 3 Caballeros. I'll show you pictures of them. They're 3 happy chappies and snappy serappies. There you go. Panchito, Jose Carioca, and Donald Duck. Jose's the dapper one. Panchito's the Mexican bandit one. And Donald Duck is Donald Duck. Thresh Ponder says avoid Disney altogether. Not an option. We're going for the 3 Caballeros, which is my favorite Disney movie. That and Saludos Amigos are my 2 favorite Disney movies, and they were made in the 1940s because I'm deeply retro. Okay, so who do we want? Donald Duck, Panchito, Jose Carioca. I did say on a previous video on the driving channel that I want to see a live action version of that with Pedro Pascal playing Jose Carioca and Donald Duck being played by Timothy Chalamet. But we do have a bit of Avoid Donald from Damien. I'll give you my ones. Isn't this song Mary Void a proposing bestiality? No, let's not go to bestiality. We already done necrophilia. We'll avoid bestiality this time around. Tell you what my choices are. Tell you what my ones are. Avoid Donald. Don't like Donald Duck much. Marry Jose Carioca because he's suave. And Snog Panchito because he's a wild man. That's the ones I'll go to. Do you want actresses? Do you want classic Hollywood actresses for the Snog Marry Avoid? Because I can go that. Carmen Molina for obvious reasons. Patrick says Donald Duck sucks. I didn't know that, but what he does in his personal life is not my business. People hate Donald Duck. In fact, Disney characters, for the most part, are so watered down and white bread that it's hard to like any of the main Disney characters. They're like the canon of Disney. Richard says the only Disney film I enjoy is Cat from Outer Space because Jake the Cat is so cool. Roger says Snog Steve Martin, marry Martin Short, avoid Heavy Chase. No, that's the 3 Amigos, but I did have that on the list as well, so you can go with 3 Amigos if you want. Ken says, I like Drunk Donald Duck. The alternative lyrics to Tie Me Kangaroo Down are less controversial than the original these days. Yeah, but it's Rolf Harris. And Rolf Harris is persona non grata for very solid reasons. He was a Russell Brand of his day. Yeah, you should watch 3 Caballeros and Saludos Amigos. If you have Disney Plus, they're on there. And there's some of the better things to watch on Disney Plus, to be honest. I've got Disney Plus for Marvel stuff because I'm watching Daredevil, Born Again, amongst other things. And so we bite the bullet every year and get an annual subscription to that. Okay, classic movie actresses. I'm going to do them. Snog, marry, avoid. I'm going to do actors as well. I'm going to be fair about this. I'm going to do actors after I do actresses. Anne Margaret, Ava Gardner, young Ava Gardner, and Sophia Loren. So Snog, marry, avoid, Anne Margaret, Ava Gardner, and Sophia Loren. Captain Laser says, I like Goofy as classic idiot American, well-meaning but ends in disaster. Yeah, I get the political subtext of that. But, yep, so we're on to Anne Margaret, Ava Gardner, Sophia Loren. And I'll tell you my choices in about 2 minutes or so. I should put some hold music on here, like the Jeopardy music. DB Cooper says, Guy Caballero on the SCTV station owner play with Joe Flattery was hilarious beside his name, which was redundant. Yeah, he was. A guy is a Caballero. Yeah, okay. Not sure whether the Snog and marry avoid is working. Friday says Snog and Margaret marry Ava Gardner, avoid Sophia Loren. I would go with that. That's pretty much my choice as well. And Margaret and Ava Gardner really projected their fondness for, they were fond of the wand, let's say. Patrick says Snog, Sophia, marry Ava, avoid Anne. Fresh Ponder says Snog, Anne, marry Sophia, avoid Ava Gardner. Captain Laser says Anne Margaret, way more talented than given credit for. Absolutely. FG says Snog, Ava, marry Sophia, avoid Anne Margaret. Ralph says Snog, Anne Margaret, marry Sophia, avoid Ava. Murdersville says Snog, Anne, marry Sophia, avoid Ava. Brian says Snog, Sophia, marry Anne Margaret, avoid Ava Gardner. Bent Ed says Snog, Sophia, marry Anne Margaret, avoid Ava Gardner. Young Ava Gardner, 1948, One Touch of Venus. There's nothing hotter. Evil Pixie says marry Sophia Loren, Snog Ava Gardner, avoid Anne Margaret. Sophia edges out Ava because of the food. Anne Margaret seems like a wild time, says DB Cooper. Roger says Snog Anne Margaret, marry Ava Gardner, avoid Sophia Loren. FG says I'm Italian, can't avoid Sophia. Fair enough. Peter says Snog and avoid Ava, marry Sophia. She's Italian. Captain Laser says, like both, I'll move to Utah. Ramsar says, avoid Ava, Snog Margaret, and Margaret, marry Sophia. Friday says, Anne will be a marry, but she was too into Elvis. She really blew Elvis off the screen. I watched Viva Las Vegas earlier this year, and she outacted and out-rizzed Elvis in that movie by about 300%. Tom says One Touch of Venus was great. It was a fantastic little fun movie. Murdersville says all marry and Snog, all three, just not at the same time. Why can't you handle it? So that's that one. I'm going to do actors now because I do have to be even-handed in this, and you got to step outside your own sexuality sometimes to answer these things. Classic movie actors. So it's Snog, marry, avoid. Cary Grant, George Clooney, and Jean Marais. Now I'm going to show you a picture of Jean Marais because Jean Marais was muy caliente in his day. There's your picture of Jean Marais who don't know who he was. Friday says, also as an artist, I love how she painted in that one film. Cool. So there's your choices. Clooney, Cary Grant, Jean Marais. Brian says, Giallo version, Snog Barbara Boucher, Snog Omri Fenech, and Snog Rosa Boneri. I see what you did there. So there we go. There's your Jean Marais. You got Clooney, you got Cary Grant, and Jean Marais. What are your choices there? Murdersville says Snog Jean, marry Cary, avoid George. Fair enough. Carol says, Snog Clooney, Mary Carey, no idea about the last guy, but it looks scary, so avoid. Jean Marais was Jean Cocteau's lover, and also a great actor. He was in Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. DB Cooper says, marry Cary Grant as long as he stays in character. Franny says, Snog Jean Marais, marry Cary Grant, avoid George Clooney. Flash Pondo says, marry Cary, Snog Clooney, and avoid Jean Marais. Peter says, Snog Cary, marry Jean, avoid Clooney. So my choice on this one is Snog Jean Marais, hot guy. Marry Clooney and avoid Cary Grant, even though I do like Cary Grant. Ralph says, Snog Clooney, marry Cary, avoid Jean Marais. Evil Pixie says, marry Cary, Snog Clooney, avoid Jean. And Carol says, loved Cary in North by Northwest. I really like him in To Catch a Thief as well. I saw that on 4K the other month, and I really enjoyed it. Friday said, Cary Grant said, everybody wants to be Cary Grant, including me. Yeah, I see the dilemma there. Real problem. Why is my nose running suddenly? Sorry about this, but it's better that than snot. This is going better. Okay, I'm going to do classic. I'm going to do Dr. No now. Here's your choices in the Dr. No Snog Marry Avoid. Sylvia Trench, played by Eunice Gayson, the one that he says Bond, James Bond, too. Miss Tarot, played by Zena Marshall, the woman he met on the mountains in Jamaica. And Honey Rider, played by Ursula Andress. So you got Sylvia Trench, Miss Tarot, and Honey Rider. Friday says, because he never felt like Cary Grant until the LSD therapy. That did seem to help him a lot. And to be honest, there was one point in my life where a little bit of an acid trip helped me through a dilemma as well. So therapeutically, I'm big on LSD. I think under the right circumstances, it can be very useful to let you step outside yourself and examine your life. So good on Cary Grant for taking the chance on that. I should check out that picture that Richard sent me of Roxy watching me on YouTube, because that might be fun. Oh, that's sweet. Got Roxy there in shadow over me. Oh, that's lovely. I'll share that one later. Now, where was I? Okay. Franny says, yeah, it can really help, but it has to be taken the right way. I agree, Franny. You gotta be very careful with psychoactive pharmaceuticals. Bennett says, Snog Miss Tara, marry Honey, avoid Sylvia. Her eyebrows concern me. Brian says, Snog Ursula Andress, marry Eunice Gayson, avoid Miss Taro. Thresh Bonner says, marry Ursula, Snog Miss Taro, avoid Sylvia. Dean says, Terry got here a bit late. How long is the chat going for? It's going for another hour and 11 minutes, Dean. Patrick says, Snog Sylvia, marry Taro, avoid Honey. Okay, my one is Snog Sylvia because she was hot. Avoid Miss Taro because she tried to kill James Bond. And marry Honey Child Rider, even though the character is kind of infantile. She's kind of like a naive nature girl kind of thing, played by an actress nearing 30, which is, for me, somewhat creepy. Roger says, Snog Honey, marry Sylvia, avoid Taro. Good choice. But, yeah. So I've got that. What else have I got here? Brian says, Eunice Gayson could have had an eyebrow contest with Roger Moore. Who would win? Depends on how you do an eyebrow contest. Is it like fighting with your heads put together? Hard to tell. But Eunice Gayson was hot in her day, so I'm going with her for the one to Snog. I'm going to do Daniel Craig James Bond now. Here's your choices. Vesper Lynd, played by Eva Green. Lucia Sciarra, played by Monica Bellucci. Madeline Swan, played by Leia Seydoux. D. Lee says, Snog, Cary Grant, marry Donald Duck, avoid Ava Gardner. You got all of those wrong. Bruce says, I love that Eunice Gayson was a Bond girl in 2 movies, Dr. No and From Russia with Love. So, yep. So you got Vesper Lynd, Lucia Sciarra, and Madeline Swan. I'm going with, it's such a hard one. Patrick says, actually avoid them all, but marry Diana Rigg. Franny says, Snog Monica, marry Eva, avoid Madeline. I'll agree with that. Monica Bellucci, yeah. And marry Eva Green. I'm kind of 50-50 on Snog Eva Green and Snog Monica Bellucci because I'd like to do both. But, yeah. Ben Ed says, Snog Vespa, marry Lucia, avoid Madeline. FG says, Snog Monica Bellucci, marry Eva Green, don't know the third woman. Madeline Swan is the one that Bond ultimately got together with and had a child with. Hey, Board 1CO. Hi, Terry from Toronto. I saw a film yesterday I heard called Freaky Tales, an indie anthology film 2024. Stars Pedro Pascal, Ben Mendelsohn, and cameo by Tom Hanks. It's got Mendo in it. Have to check that one out. I like a bit of Ben Mendelsohn. Evil Pixie says, be arrested for bigamy. Not if you have an open relationship. Ralph says, marry Monica. Don't care about the others. Richard says, I'm with Patrick in regards to Diana Rigg. Ramsar says, Eva Green for the win. I can respect that opinion, though it's a tough one to separate Eva Green and Monica Bellucci. Roger says, preferred Plenty O'Toole. Well, you can go on Grindr. Let's see, what else we got? How about we do cartoons? Do people want to have a cartoon option? Because this one's kind of interesting. Dean says, is James Bond really dead? And the final 007 didn't have a sort of EMP device in his watch? Yeah, but an EMP device doesn't stop you from getting hit by a missile. James Bond's dead. They're underlining that. Amazon now have the rights to James Bond. They're in pre-production for a new James Bond film, which is kind of going to be interesting. Brian says, Eunice Gayson also had a nice early role in Revenge of Frankenstein. Cool. Richard says, even Carol would marry Diana Rigg if she was that way inclined. I can see that. Flash Pondo says, got a split, making dinner for the missus. Enjoy the birthday month. Thank you. And enjoy your dinner. And thanks for the good wishes. Yeah, so I'm going with cartoons now. You ready for this? Smurfette from the Smurfs. Wilma Flintstone or Betty Rubble? Smurfette, Wilma Flintstone or Betty Rubble? They're your choices for your cartoons. Ralph says, I'm of the school that Bond is Dread Pirate Roberts. Yeah, but why aren't the bad guys from Florin or Gilda? And why aren't there any shrieking eels or rodents of unusual size in the James Bond movies? Evil Pixie says, marry Wilma, Snog Betty, avoid Smurfette. Peter says, Snog Wilma, marry Betty, avoid Smurfette. Arthur says, Betty Rubble is too grindy. Haha. Ralph says, avoid Smurfette, Snog Wilma, marry Betty. Bennett says, Snog Betty, marry Wilma, avoid the blue creature. Bull Once here says, Betty Rubble, but I always had a thing for Velma from Scooby-Doo. Velma is canonically lesbian now. FG says, Snog Betty, marry Wilma, avoid Smurfette. Brian says, Snog Betty, marry Wilma, avoid Smurfette. Franny says, Snog Betty, marry Wilma, avoid Smurfette, even though Wilma would never leave Fred. Murdersville says, Snog Betty, marry Wilma, avoid Smurfette. Roger says, Snog Betty, marry Wilma, avoid Smurfette, that's just sick. Arthur says, didn't Smurfette do the whole town? I'll steer clear. I'm not slut-shaming Smurfette. Whatever you float your boat. Richard says, change my belief so I can marry all three. Dean says, Wilma or Betty, Ginger or Marianne, chicken or the egg? I'm not marrying an egg. Patrick says, Snog Wilma, marry Betty, avoid Smurfette. I would snog Betty. I would marry Wilma and get some of those really big ribeyes and like racks of ribs, and avoid Smurfette because Smurfette's much too small. She's built more Trump size than my size, if you understand what I mean. I've got more. Do we want more? Remzar says, do one with Barbara Eden and I Dream of Jeannie, Elizabeth Montgomery and Wish, and one more. Who will be the one more? Okay, here we go. Ginny from I Dream of Ginny, Samantha from Bewitched, or Nanny from Nanny and the Professor. Franny says, Smurfette is canonically trans. Good. In that case, I support Smurfette 100%. So there you go. Jeannie, Samantha, or Nanny from Nanny and the Professor. Who are we going with there? And the chat's gone slow while people think that one through. So the actresses are Barbara Eden, Elizabeth Montgomery, and Juliette Mills. Peter says, Snog Jeannie, marry Samantha, avoid Nanny. Patrick says, Snog Nanny, marry Jeannie, and avoid Samantha. Franny says, Snog Jeannie, marry Samantha, avoid Nanny. Ramzar says, Barbara Eden for everything. She's still alive at 93. Wouldn't she be a bit fragile? Brian Lindsay says, Snog Samantha, marry Jeannie, avoid Nanny. Richard says, I definitely snog Rosemary from Hong Kong Fooey. Dean says, Menage a trois. Wouldn't it be a quatre? Roger says, Snog Jeannie, marry Sam, avoid Nanny, too posh. FG says, Snog Juliet Mills, marry Jeannie, avoid Samantha. Medersville says, Snog Jeannie, Samantha marry, Nanny avoid. Okay, let's see. I would snog Samantha. I would avoid Jeannie because she's a bit too of a bottom for me. And I would marry Nanny. Ooh, I've got some good ones left. Okay, here's the next one. Star Trek. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Snog, marry, avoid. I'll tell you my one up front. Dean says all of those girls have some sort of baggage. So we're on to Star Trek. Kirk, Spock, McCoy. Brian says Liz Montgomery is terrific in Johnny Cool opposite Henry Silver. I did a video about Johnny Cool. Very cool soundtrack too, with Sammy Davis Jr. singing the theme song. FG says, Snog, Kirk, marry McCoy, avoid Spock. Evil Pixie says, marry Spock, Snog, Kirk, avoid Bones. Friday says, Snog, Spock, marry McCoy, avoid Kirk. That's my one too. Snog, Spock, McCoy's reliable. He's a doctor too. And avoid Kirk because there's too many red flags in Kirk. Ralph says, Snog, Bones, marry Spock, avoid Kirk. Peter says, avoid Kirk, marry Spock, Snog, McCoy. They don't call him Bones for nothing. You know something I don't? But yeah, I did that because of the Star Trek video I just did, where I thought DeForest Kelly is much cooler than Shatner, which is my take out of that. Roger says, Snog, Kirk, marry McCoy, avoid Spock. That's logical. But the thing is, if you Snog Spock, you've only got to do it once every 7 years. Murdersville says, Snog, Spock, marry McCoy, avoid Kirk. Good choice. I think I'll do 3 more of these and then we'll move on to something else. Because I've got 3 good ones and the last one's going to be impossible to figure out. And you can't use one for all of the options. Captain Lacey says, Snog, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, marry Scotty. That's a bit slutty, isn't it? Yeah. From a second season episode, Risk is Our Business. Okay, next one. Which one will I do? Spy Chicks. I'm going to do Spy Chicks. Modesty Blaze. April Dancer from The Girl from U.N.C.L.E. And Emma Peel. They're your choices. Monica Vitti, Stephanie Powers, or Diana Rigg. So we've got Modesty Blaze, April Dancer, and Emma Peel. What does chat say about those? Just waiting for it to percolate now. Patrick says, Diana for all 3. Friday says, Snog, Modesty Blaze, marry Emma Peel, avoid April Dancer. That's pretty much my one. Because Snogging Modesty Blaze would be fun. Evil Pix says, marry Emma, Snog, Modesty, avoid April. FG says, Snog, Diana Rigg, marry Stephanie Powers, avoid Modesty Blaze. Dean says, has Luna made an appearance yet? No, because Luna's been up since 2 in the morning, scratching at our bedroom door, which is why I got up at 3 in the morning. And now she's gone for a cat nap because she's a random beast. Brian says, Snog, Diana, marry Stephanie, avoid Monica. Ralph says, marry Peel, Snog, Blaze, avoid Dancer. Yeah, we're pretty much fairly aligned on those. Yeah, I've fed the cats. I've let them out in the yard for a while. And now they've both gone to sleep, which I don't mind because it means they're not meowing at me to let them out in the middle of a live stream. There's a strategy I've got to have with cats and with Sal being asleep. So I've got to be strategic about how I do these things. Ramzar says, Monica Vita was so naughty. Snog her and then avoid her. Diana is brainy, so marry her. Captain Lazy says, wake Luna or she'll do it again. No, if I wake her, she'll inevitably do it. I'm not waking her up. She's up the back room having a sleep. Roger says, Snog Diana, marry April, avoid Modesty. Nah, don't agree with that one. Dean says, how's my health these days? My health's fine. I'm avoiding salty foods. I'm taking my medication. I'm getting exercise. Everything's archy at the moment. So hopefully it stays that way. I'm working on it. And my heart rate one at the moment is 70 beats a minute, which is good. When I did exercise yesterday, I'm doing exercise tomorrow. Today, I'm not going to because I'm going back for a nap after the live stream. And then I've got things to do around town. But yeah, everything's going fine. And this is the bit where I die in the middle of a live stream of a heart attack. Thank you, Captain Laser. I appreciate that. Yeah, so here's your second last one. You ready for this? Australian actors marry, snog, marry, avoid. Guy Pearce, Brian Brown, Chris Hemsworth. So they're your choices for snog, marry, avoid. Guy Pearce, Brian Brown, and Chris Hemsworth. I'll just let that one sit for a while. By the way, super chats are still available. Ben says snog Hemsworth, marry Guy, avoid Brian. Friday says snog Hemsworth, marry Guy, avoid Brian. D. Lee says Kirk's going to get a lot of voices. Peter says snog Chris, marry Guy, avoid Brian. FG says snog Guy Pearce, marry Chris Hemsworth, avoid Brian. Murdersville says snog Brian, marry Guy, avoid Chris. Just to speed things up, Guy Pearce did appear in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. But I thought I'd put in a decent Australian actor one for people so they. Dean says Brian Brown and Guy Pearce are getting up there in age. Is that a negative, ladies? Why would it be? Richard says Carol goes with snog Chris, marry Guy, and she doesn't know Brian. There's a new release of a Brian Brown movie that hasn't been released on anything except VHS called The Empty Beach, where he plays a private eye. So that one's coming out soon. And that was Brian in his prime, mid 1980s. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, Umbrella will send me a copy of it. Captain Lacey says snog Chris, marry Guy, avoid Brian. I'm going with snog Guy, marry Brian because he's got a really nice house up on Palm Beach, and avoid Chris. Chris sounds like high maintenance. Patrick says snog Guy, marry Chris, avoid Brian. Ralph Hodge says break a Moran. Edward Woodward wasn't an option. So yeah, snog Guy, marry Brian, avoid Chris. Because you don't want somebody that's going to live on bloody exercise and, you know, milkshakes. So do people want the last of these snog, marry, avoids? Because I've got an impossible one for you. Let me know if you want the last one because it is challenging. This one is an impossible question. What would Sally choose? I don't know. She can find out later. Okay, here we go. Last one. Snog, marry, avoid. Trump, Musk, Netanyahu. Mel Gibson's an American. He was born in America. So there's your last one. Trump, Musk, Netanyahu. Like I said, this is the impossible one. I did this on my Facebook and people went, ooh. Patrick says, go live in a cave. Is there a Devi? I'm not sure what that is. Trump, Musk, Netanyahu. Is there a Devil's Island to exile them on? No. I knew this one would stun everybody, and I put it in there for that reason. D. Lee says, "Can we have Captain Kirk back?" No, you can't. Roger says, "Pass." As I said, it's an impossible one. Captain Laser says, "Join a monastery." No, I couldn't keep a straight face in the prayers. I could never join a monastery. Okay, we'll let that one sit. Bennett says they can snog each other and I'll take photos as compromise. Patrick says, actually invite 3 into a cave and dynamite the entrance. FG says, the thought is nauseating. Yeah, that's why this is the last one. You can't really go anywhere after I've done that one. Evil Pixie says, just no. Okay, so do people enjoy that Snog, Marry, Avoid? I may do some in the future if people enjoy them, because there's a little bit of interactivity and it's a little bit of fun and it's a little bit of naughtiness without going too far into the naughtiness. And I did make it Snog, Marry, Avoid to avoid a lot of sexism. I didn't really want it to go hateful against people, particularly people of other genders. Franny says the only way is up now. Absolutely. Why have I got a hair in my mouth? Don't answer that question. Okay, Richie's too. Hi, Terry Cook, drive by here. When did birthday month become a thing? Never heard it before. Now seeing multiple examples in the last few weeks. I'm doing birthday month because the live stream of my birthday month is the birthday month as far as the channel is concerned. I'm not going to milk the birthday a lot, but April's my birthday month. I do a monthly live stream, so it makes sense for me to make it a birthday month live stream. Ramsar says, someone mentioned Plenty O'Toole from Diamonds After River, which was Lana Wood, Sinister, and Natney Wood. That James Bond movie had the best Bond girls, including Jules St. John. I don't know, there's some good ones in later Bond films. For some reason, there weren't a lot of great Bond girls in the Roger Moore tenure. I think they didn't want actresses who were too vivid because Roger Moore was so white bread. Zami says, if you could pick an obscure film that everyone should see, what would it be? Let me think. Is Tokyo Story obscure? I know it's on a lot of people's top lists, but a lot of English-speaking film buffs haven't seen it because it's Japanese. But if it can be included, I would say Tokyo Story, Yasujiro Ozu's Tokyo Story, which is the best movie ever made. Close second is Paddington 2, but Tokyo Story. Famke Janssen wasn't in the Roger Moore period. She was in the Pierce Brosnan. Captain Laser says, how many birthday candles? We're not doing candles because it would cause a fire. But the birthday is 68. Rosie Carver was a hot Bond girl, says Richard. Yeah, but she didn't have a lot of character. I mean, Gloria Hendry, beautiful looking woman, but I'm not sure she had tremendous presence as an actress, which is the reason why you didn't get Pam Grier in a Roger Moore James Bond film. She would have acted him off the bloody screen. Dean says Carolyn Munro's my choice. Jane Seymour from Morbon. She was bland, a virginal bland actress with limited acting ability. Murdersville says quite like Maud Adams. Evil Pixie says, what's your favourite Ian Fleming fictional name? Mine is Truly Scrumptious. I've got to go past the audacity. Can't go past the audacity of Pussy Galore. I mean, that was out there and it got past everybody. D. Lee says, The Passion of Joan of Arc with Maria Falconetti gives one of the best performances ever filmed. I agree. Captain Laser says, damn, you're doing great. Thank you. And yeah, and most of are really quite an impact on 10-year-old me. Friday says, Caroline Munro is always pretty. Tom Stein says Carole Cossi was the only transgender actor to appear in a James Bond film. Actress. Uh, I don't want to misgender people, so actress. But yeah, why not? And I think if Daniel Craig was still doing Bond, Daniel Craig wouldn't be adverse to that either. Ramsar says Caroline Munro is super hot in Golden Voyage of Sinbad. Watched it in the old Odeon Marble Arch as a kid. She was beautiful. I'll give her that, but I don't know whether she just wasn't striking in the way certain other actresses are. And I like the fact that she's now introducing movies on a streaming channel in the UK. All credit to her for that. Long career and big fan base, Caroline Munro. And you can watch her in Captain Kronos on 4K, says Franny. I've got Captain Kronos on Blu-ray. Not sure I really want to invest in the 4K of that. Sammy says, have you been to the UK? I'm in London. Yeah, I was in the UK in 2004. Back in the dim, dark days before everything happened. Brexit, pandemics, things like that. I had a good time there. Went to Port Miriam. We did a lot of stuff in 6 weeks or so, Sal and I. Not sure if we can get back there. The finances aren't there. But it wouldn't be something we'd be adverse to. Captain Laser says, what's the Beatles' Yellow Submarine? Should it be remade? No. Just let it be what it is. Thomas says, do you really collect any movie magazines? I've got a lot, but I'm looking to get rid of them at some stage because they're just taking up room and I'm not reading them again. I've got a whole bunch of them, but I'm not actively collecting them at the moment. Richard says, Valerie Leon from Hammer and Carry On films was in The Spy Who Loved Me as a hotel desk clerk. She was also in Never Say Never Again in a bikini. The Richie said, COVID aside, are there any Aussies who haven't been to the UK? Yeah, people who can't afford to. And there are a number of people who can't afford to. And I couldn't afford to travel overseas beyond New Zealand until I was well into my 40s. So definitely, yeah, there are a lot that can't. It's expensive to travel anywhere overseas. It costs $500 return to get to New Zealand if you get a cheap fare. And to go anywhere else, it's a lot more. There are some deals that can be done, but still, it's a non-trivial task to get anywhere overseas from Australia. Brian says, Captain Kronos is such a clever, subversive little movie. Very enjoyable, great sword fight at the end. Yeah, I like it, but I don't necessarily need the upgrade. Franny says, Valerie Leona, Blood from Mummy's Tomb was a great movie, even though she's not the best actress. Yeah, it's based on a Bram Stoker story, I think, if I am remembering correctly. Richie's too says, I know the feeling Australia is one of the few places never made it to. Yeah, well, what gets me is American wankers who think Australia doesn't exist and that everybody here is an actor. If that's the case, those bastards owe me 68 years of back pay. Barrett says, thanks, Terry. Have a great weekend and birthday. The weekend's over for me, but appreciate the good wishes. Dealey says, I think Dougal and the Blue Cat is an unofficial sort of sequel to Yellow Submarine. It could be. I wasn't that keen on Yellow Submarine. I thought it was a bit clockwork in some ways, just there to link the songs together. I did see Yellow Submarine in Liverpool, though. So, yeah, it looks like we're opening it up to questions. I'm happy to do questions for the next 40 minutes. Friday says, Jewel of the Seven Stars by Bram Stoker. Yep, there's another adaptation of that in a kind of way by Kim Newman. And Kim Newman's somebody that I have a lot of respect for as a film critic and as a movie buff and also as a writer. Tom says, why isn't Australia considered a continent? It is. It's the island continent. And it's the only continent I've driven all the way across. Roger says, Bond girl names are good. Rider, pussy, plenty, good head. Yeah. Peter says, Blood and Mummy's Tomb is based on Stoker's Jewel of 7 Stars. Highly recommended. Read from me. I've read it a long time ago. And the good thing is Bram Stoker's now in the public domain, so you can just download everything from Gutenberg if you want to. That's the other interesting thing. Next 10 years are going to be fantastic in film. Because over the next 10 years, Superman and Batman are going to get in public domain. There's already Disney stuff that's going into public domain, and there's going to be more of it. Steamboat Willie has got 3 horror adaptations I already know of. Sammy says, I love the Australian crime films like Money Movers. Any that I haven't heard of. There's a couple of things coming out from Umbrella. There's The Empty Beach with Brian Brown, where he plays a private eye, Cliff Hardy, which is based on one of a series of novels that Peter Corris did. He did about 30 novels with this character. That's recommended. Goodbye Paradise is coming out in the same box set. And Goodbye Paradise is a good Australian political crime movie, which I love. Dean says, I come to realise there's a subgenre of films, I call it Netflix films. After watching Craven, a big budget film that has no reason to be made except for release on Netflix. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of them. I saw a few of them. Most of them are spy and action films, like The Grey Man, for instance. And there are some that are being done by Amazon, which star gone blank for a second. Which star Dave Bautista. And Dave Bautista knows what kind of movies these are and leans into the silliness of the action films he's doing for streaming services. And he's doing a good job of it. He's one of the best actors that nobody considers a good actor. Kes says, I heard rumors Blood Meridian is going to be adapted into a movie. There's a possibility. Captain Laser says, if Australia joins Canada, Australia, and UK, and New Zealand, would I visit Canada, New Zealand, or the UK if the airfare was low? It'd have to be low. I'd have travel insurance to have to pay and all sorts of other things. So I need to be making more money from this YouTube gig for that to happen. Tom says, what do I think of the Carnival of Souls? Fantastic film. Herc Harvey did a fantastic job with that film. And I really should do a deep dive on it for the channel at some stage because it is. I'll probably double feature that with Coppola's Dementia 13, low budget horror films that punch well above their weight. It might be a theme for a double feature on the channel. Richard says, following on your recent Star Trek Khan video, I thought it was great good IDW publishing comic books called Khan Ruling in Hell, which bridges the gap between Space Seed and Wrath of Khan. I'm going to have to check that out, so let me make a note. Because my note taker is not available at the moment. Thanks for that, Richard. Brian says, maybe Amazon will finally give us a Bond film with the villain whose lair is in Australia's vast, striking, picturesque landscapes. Yeah, there are no Bond movies that were filmed in Australia. There was Mission Impossible too, but we've got such great landscapes and such wild and weird places that it's stupid not to. And we've also got the people to make the movie as well. We've got the technical expertise and the infrastructure here and the studios. Dockland Studio here in Melbourne, you can make any film in. So it'd be interesting to do that. Captain Laser says, Horror Wednesday. Yeah, I was thinking of theming each day of the week. But I do get the hauls from Imprint and Umbrella. And that kind of kicks into that. So I'm not sure it'll work. But it is on the board to be a possibility for the channel to do that. But yeah, I'm interested to see what Amazon does with Bond. A lot of people are wary of it, and a lot of people are going to chuck the shits whatever happens with it. And there will be a lot of that stuff. There were people doing that when Daniel Craig became James Bond. He really put his own stamp on it when he did. So we'll see how that goes. Emmy says, first Bond building in Yabba. Yabba's a bit too working class for Bond, really. Richard says, saw your travel video which showed Darkman himself ruining your walk to the pier. He did. Liam Neeson Frank Drebin Jr. ruined my walk on Altona Pier. And there's a whole video about that on the Travel Channel. IDW also did Star Trek Next Generation Doctor Who crossover series. That's kind of interesting. Dean says, all it takes is right tax incentives for your film industry, not just New Zealand. Yeah, absolutely. And Australia made feature films before America did back in the day, back in the 1890s and the early 1900s. But our politicians sold the Australian film industry out to the American film industry in the 1920s and 1930s, very controversially. Evil Pixie says, just watch Dave Bautista in The Last Showgirl. A very good understated performance. Dave Bautista is a fine actor, and I will die on that hill. I really like what he does, and I like the fact that he's stepped outside the bullshit and the macho of being an ex-wrestler and has reinvented himself in such a creative and grounded way. I've got nothing but good things to say about Dave Bautista. The Richies too says, a bit late, but I want to say thank you for recommending Invasion of the Beagles. Finally caught it on Prime. It was something. Yes, it is. And it does have the saving grace of many a 1970s B movie. Lashings of gratuitous nudity. Brian says, Bonk could be abandoned in the outback and have to use his skills to survive. Different skill set. And Brian says, Invasion of the Beagles is hilarious. It is. And Dave Bautista is great. Absolutely. Dave Bautista is better at it than Dwayne Johnson. Absolutely. And John Cena is running a parallel course with Dave Bautista, but going to the comedic side more. And I like what John Cena is doing as well. He's making fun of the fact that he looks, to quote Clive James on Arnold Schwarzenegger, like a condom full of walnuts. Darren says, Australian $50. Thank you. It's a working day, so I'll just drop in with your present. Happy birthday. Thank you, Darren. I really appreciate that, mate. 50 AUD. That is going to be pissed away on something I don't need. Appreciate that, mate. And thanks for supporting the channel, not only with the money, but with the attention and watching the videos and that. That counts at least as much. I really appreciate that, and have a great day, mate. Kez the Drone says, I want to see Riddick dropped into the Predator planet as a punishment. He was not expected to survive. That could work. Ramzar says, Star Trek Wrath of Khan Ruling in Hell comic book miniseries looks very interesting. It's Khan Noonien sings Exile and SETI Alpha 5. Thanks for the tip. Roger says, saw a clip of the new Police Squad film with Liam Neeson. Is this real or piss take? It's real. And I'm going to watch it. And I think it may be a career pivot for Liam Neeson instead of doing those codge exploitation action films like The Mongoose, which he was filming in Melbourne, which ruined me filming on Altona Pier because they were getting it ready for Liam Neeson to drive Shelby Cobra up the pier. And so I couldn't get and do it and had to go and film the pier later on. But yeah, that's real. And I will go with that because it looks like it could be fun. And we need more fun films that don't take themselves seriously, get transgressive. There's an O.J. Simpson joke in the trailer as well, which I appreciated. And there's a little flex on Mission Impossible films as well. So there's nothing not to love there. The Richie 2 says, Police Squad could be incredible or the worst ever. Not sure how it will work in present self-awareness startup to live. It'll work. Dean says Liam Neeson has a certain set of skills. He does. Brian says, Action Grandpa. Comedy not as big a pivot as Leslie Nielsen did. No. But all credit to him for doing that. I think his deadpan style may lend itself pretty well to that kind of a character who isn't aware of how stupid he is. I guess that Nielsen's about the same age as Leslie Nielsen was when he did the original Police Squad. He's older. I'm sure he's older. Liam Neeson's about 70 now, and I don't think Leslie Nielsen was anywhere near that old when he started doing Police Squad. Yeah, I love the original Police Squad series. There's that great line where the bad guy says to him, who are you and how did you get in here? And Leslie Nielsen says to him, "I'm a locksmith, and I'm a locksmith." Fantastic writing in that. Yeah, Richie says 50 then was like 70 now. Yeah, possibly. I'll wait and see. I'm a bit reluctant to judge movies until I see them because I am part now, almost accidentally, part of a professional critics association. And I'm not really going to flex on movies I haven't seen when I've only seen the trailer. And I'm not going to try to prophesy what they're going to be like until I actually see them. I think that's unprofessional. And apart from anything else, it's just stupid and it adds to the static rather than focusing in on you should see this movie, you shouldn't see this movie. I think wait and see the film. I don't know whether the Police Squad Naked Gun movie is going to be good or not. I hope it's going to be good. I think it's got potential to be good, but we'll just have to wait and see. Neeson was funny as hell in Ricky Gervais's extras. He was. Richard says, not giving away too many spoilers, but Khan William Hill does try to solve the Chekhov recognition problem. El Nielsen, I think I understand the casting choices, D. Lee. Yeah, the OJ joke was hilarious. Just the side eye in the OJ joke really worked. And to be honest, they had to address it at some stage if they were doing everybody else. And they set that up really nicely. And I think it's got the same kind of comedy beats as the original Naked Gun movies, which I think is going to mean that it may well land. Seth MacFarlane's producing it, and even though people have a problem with Seth MacFarlane sometimes, for a start, he called out Harvey Weinstein before anyone else did. And for another thing, he knows his comedy beats and his comedy chops. Brian says, yeah, too many good movies with bad trailers and vice versa. Trailers are such an art form. Giving away too much is bad, but giving away not enough leads to that rampant fanboy speculation. I think it's interesting that with the Superman movie, James Gunn showed the bit where Superman crashes into the ice and then Krypto rescues him. And now he's brought out a more elaborate version of that, which shows Krypto rescuing him in more detail. It shows him dragging him to the Fortress of Solitude. The Superman robots are there, and they help revive Superman using um, amplified solar energy from our yellow sun. So all of that stuff is pure Superman canon from the comic books, but it's only a small part of the movie, and it's just James Gunn opening the door a little bit and allowing people to peek in to say this is what it's going to be. It's going to have comedy beats, but it's also going to be comic book accurate, and I find that quite interesting. Ramsar says Leslie Nielsen started his comedy career with Airplane, yeah, and which is known as Flying High here in Australia. Rishi says every trailer now boring. I don't know. I think there is an art form to it, and it can be done well. There are some trailers that come out for kind of low, medium budget horror films from A24, where they do the trailer as a teaser, literally as a teaser. It gives you just enough to go, I want to see more of this. It's bait on the end of the hook. And I think that can work. The trailer for Megan was that, where you suddenly go, shit, there's a killer doll robot. And it's got a sense of humor and it's really fucking weird. And I think that works. I think A24 do trailers really, really well. And even though their movies aren't enormous budgets, they run from 20 to $50 million. They end up making about 200 million in the box office. And they're cash cows for A24 because a well-made horror movie is the keys to the bank. D. Lee says, I prefer the Police Squad TV series to the Naked Gun films because it captures 60s, 70s cop shows to a T. Oh, sorry, not boring. I meant those damn bong sound effects. Yeah, that shit doesn't work. That's why I didn't like Dunkirk, even though I like Christopher Nolan movies. The sound design on that just annoyed the shit out of me. Richie says, Chimes of Doom, I believe they're called. Yeah. Tom loved Megan. There's a sequel coming out, and I'm going to watch it. I'm going to go to the cinema to see it because I liked it. Dean says, is there still a Superman curse? Actors who portrayed the iconic. No, you know why? Curses don't exist. their publicity, their morbidity. Curses simply do not exist. Let's stay in a rational world. There are people who aren't, who are damaging the whole planet. So I'm going to stay reality based and say curses don't exist. Curses Drone says, I like Megan, but the second one looks a little too CGI heavy. I'll wait and see. I'm going to go there and just enjoy the ride. I've been on the ride before, and I'm going to enjoy the second one. So I'm happy to just look at the trailer, go, okay, and then see the movie anyway. But this is Hans Zimmer tuba fart blast. Yeah. Yeah. Sound design in movies is problematic at times. Ramsay said, I watched 3 good movies in the theaters this year. Novocaine, Mickey 17, Black Bag. Slim pickings so far this year. I might go see Novocaine this week. I've got Wednesday off, and when I'm not making a video and not doing anything else, and I can pop down to the local, show 'em my pass, and watch a couple of movies. I may will watch 2 movies, and I'm planning on Novocaine being one of them. D. Lee says, I'm seeing trailers that pretty much show the whole damn film. Told me I didn't want to see it though. Yeah, too many spoilers. I mean, I'm guilty of this when I do my reviews of some things where I just rabbit on too much about them. But trailers that give away the plot are problematic for so many people. Jim Bim says, fave cult pick of the underrated films. Appreciate your views. Thank you. I appreciate the attention you're paying to the videos. Brian says, the only one curse is real, the curse of the orange ogre. I'm going to avoid politics in this vlog as much as I possibly can. I did talk about it a bit in my next driving video on the other channel, but I want to kind of stay a little bit away from the car crash that is contemporary economics. Dean says, what about the upcoming Nobody 2? I didn't mind Nobody. I found some parts of it problematic, but I'll see how it goes. Roger Morgan says, love that line in Airplane. Surely you can't be serious. Yep, that's a good one. In the 1980s, one of the team who opened Tutankhamun's tomb died. The Sun newspaper headline was Curse Strikes Again. Yeah, because curses sell, but they're not real. The Richie 2 says, I unironically want to see a working man in a local cinema. It lasted a whole 3 days. Yeah, I like Statham movies, and I want to see that as well. Minecraft on every screen now. I suppose they have to pay the bills. Yeah, but that's the one I'm going to see with my nephew next week. And he suggested that we go and see the Minecraft movie. So we're going to go see it. We've got a movie date every year around our birthdays where we get together. He comes down from Sydney and we watch a movie together. And that's what he's chosen this time. Richard said, whenever I hear the phrase Slim Pickens, I always think of the great character actor with the same name, which is why he has the name, I suppose. Kessler Jones said, I watched Monkey last week and it was okay, but I think a bit hyped up for the horror. Yeah, the Monkey is one I'm not that keen on. I think it's a silly conceit in the base of the movie, but I may well see it when it comes to streaming. Jim Min says, help with situation, folks, dementia film. Emotional help, you're welcome. Okay, thank you. Franny says, I used to live next to a place called Shirley, the Chinese restaurant called the Shirley Temple. That's cool. I like that. Jim Bim says, oh, lucky man. But if you can't decide on recut of Caligula, yuck factor. The version of Caligula I got from Umbrella has about 6 or 7 cuts of it, including the new cut, which was made out of outtakes and actually tells the story so much better than the original. I haven't watched it all yet, but I think it's interesting that they've got so many different cuts of Caligula. You can watch one that's just purely fat material. You can watch one that actually tells the story and minimizes the amount of gratuity in it. I don't mind having that. The Richard Jew says, my next outing is Top Gun, part of that Val Kilmer tribute season. I like the fact that Val Kilmer was asked, how homoerotic on a scale of 1 to 10 do you think Top Gun was? And he said 11. Yeah, Rams, Slim Pickens was great as a B-52 pilot. In Dr. Strangelove, especially at the end, yeah. There was a step above a local tape right here. Kung Food. Brian says, should Ridley Scott just hang it up and retire? His last two films, Napoleon and Gladiator 2, are terrible. That's up to him. I've never been a fan of Ridley Scott as a director. I think he's strangely generic, and I don't think he's ever had a viewpoint in any film he's made. D. Lee says, it's like talking about The Curse of Dad's Army because all the cast starring older actors are already dead. Peter said, Minecraft with my 14-year-old son, then lunch at the pub afterwards, school holiday bliss. Yep, me and the 15-year-old nephew are going to do that. And we will have lunch, and we'll hang out, and we'll do a video about it too, because Billy makes good content. Jim Biff says, Penthouse sleaze factor, prefer new cut, but waiting when the mood strikes. Yeah, that's fair enough too. So you say Penthouse sleaze like it's a bad thing. Jim Biff says, love the Blade Runner work print. Dean says, are Grindhouse films still being made? Yeah, A24 makes them as horror films. Horror movies these days are Grindhouse films, a lot. And there are films like Strange Darling, which I really like, and I recommend highly to see Strange Darling, which is a non-linear horror crime film. That's pure Grindhouse, and it's done with a 70s style. It was filmed on, I think, 35 millimeter with beautiful saturation and classic lenses. It looks like a Grindhouse film, and in every single way, it is. Franny says they should have gone with Hong Kong Foodle. Yeah, that'd work. We have country towns here in Australia all have Chinese restaurants, and they're old school Chinese restaurants where you can get all the old school Australianized Chinese meals. And every now and then I'll film the sign outside an old school country town Chinese restaurant just for the nostalgia factor. Roger says, love Ridley's Blade Runner. Special edition is over 2 hours of outtakes. Yeah, I don't mind a director's cut. I mean, I watched the director's cut of Star Trek 2, which is better than the theatrical cut. But unless it increases the amount of understanding you have of the characters, I think there's a potential in some movies where director's cuts are just wanky and extended versions, alternative versions. A lot of those films, they just finished the film and didn't quite know how to make it better. And so they frig around with it a lot. They did that with the Star Wars movies where George Lucas went back and finger painted over things and changed things just because technology updated. I don't think that's necessary. Francis says, keep eating Chinese food in America is totally different from UK takeaway food. And Australian Chinese food is very different as well. A lot of the country roads in northern Victoria, where I live, were done by Chinese labour at the late 19th century. A lot of them. Jim Vim says, what was the first R-rated film? Yours was Meaning of Life. I had two. First two I saw in a double feature when I was 15, and I snuck in. I put Brute aftershave all over myself and asked for my ticket in a very deep voice. And I saw Scorsese's Boxcar Bertha and Slaughter with Jim Brown, both of which had lashings of nudity in them. The Richard too says, same with Indian. Yeah, Indian food's different wherever you are. I'm lucky because we have a large South Asian diaspora community in my area. And there's literally 16 food trucks a kilometre from my house. And every evening you can get Indian and South Asian food from everywhere just by walking down there, walking in, grabbing the takeaway, bringing it home. And it's all authentic Indian food. It's not westernized in any way. So you can get jalab gamun and things like that. I can get a good goat curry if I want one. They do a little thing where they sometimes get some deer. So you can get some deer curry. You can get vegetarian curries and all sorts of things. And the trucks each have like 16 or 17 different menu options on them. And they're all fantastic. Never had a bad one. And they're all local. So our Indian food scene here is as good as you get in somewhere that isn't in South Asia. Let's see. Lucas more like finger of us. Yeah, I saw what you said there. Director's cut after director's cut of Close Encounters. It was a cash grab. Absolutely. Keza Drone says, really enjoying the Mr. In Between series at the moment. It was big in Australia. Yeah, Mr. In Between's recommended. The Duelist, Alien, Blade Runner, Scott's best work. I can agree with that. DB Cooper says, after multiple decades of bad Chinese food here in Portland, Oregon, we're finally getting the real deal, and it's amazing. It is. Proper Chinese food is next level good. I will eat chicken feet till the cows come home. Peter says, love Donnie Darko, but dislike the director's cut. I can see that. Brian says, when it's time to just stream and chill, I prefer 60 shows. Star Trek, The Avengers, The Saint, dark shows. That's fine. I'm watching Rona Martin's Laughing. That's my jam at the moment. Ramsar says, Malcolm McDowell was great in his early movies like If, Clockwork Orange, and No Lucky Man, and Get Crazy. The ultimate New Year's Eve film is Get Crazy. Alan Arkush's Get Crazy. It's fantastic. And Malcolm McDowell plays a pop star called Reggie Wanker, and it's just the best. Jim Vim says, 80 memories of sneaking in other films in a local indie cinema. Now is Asian films only. Cool. I like good Asian cinema. Jim Vim says, nothing like proper food. Lost are for sure. Friday says, lots of Chinese came in the second Golden Mountain Australian Gold Rush. This is covered in detail in one of Kerry Greenwood's Friday books. Yeah, Kerry Greenwood died this week. Some friends of mine went to the memorial service. And that's a shame because I met Kerry a couple of times back 20, 25 years ago. And she flirted with me outrageously. Lovely person, good writer, a lot of fun to hang out with. Roger says, final X film was used to rate them was Lee's The Big Boss, doubled strangely with Swedish erotic film made in Sweden. I was 14, first X film. Yeah, made in Sweden I saw with Christina Lindberg. That one messed me around for a while too. Richard said, have got tired of films being re-released in multiple cuts. 5 different apocalypse now. Surely skilled filmmakers should get it right the first time. Or at least the second time. Give them a mulligan on it. But redoing the movie all the time is just uninteresting to me. Tom said, I met David Carradine at an NYC comic convention. I thanked him for his TV series Kung Fu, a great versatile actor. Yeah, but he should have been more careful with the autoerotic asphyxiation. When teens, me and a bunch of friends watched Flesh Gordon and Carrie in a small dark cinema, high on trippy mushrooms. It was an experience. I love Flesh Gordon. I was at the Australian premiere of Flesh Gordon in Paddington in Sydney at a midnight session, and I was too young to go in. And they actually gave me a full-size poster of the movie, which I lost over the years. But I love Flesh Gordon. Jim Vim says Val Luton's set is timeless. I love Val Luton's films as well. Frank says, have you seen the Kevin Bacon film The Bondsman? He's capturing demons. No, but given that pricey, I will watch it. Met a lot of A-listers via active films set since the 1990s, says Jim Bim. Richie G says, what a way to go. You can build 100 bridges, etc., but the one thing you remember for. Yep. Yeah, unfortunately, Kerry's died. There hasn't been an official announcement yet, but there was an embargo among friends and family of not telling people until after the service, and the service was yesterday. And a number of writer friends of mine have announced it on social media. But yeah, she was a hell of a person. Lawyer, writer, flirter, just a lovely person. Okay, we're in the last 10 minutes now. So anything people want to say? Any super chats you want to throw in? Yeah, you're talking about Carradine self-deletion. Yep. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's it's a pity. Jim Member says Metro Theatre, last of the Toronto porno theatres, now a rock climbing event space. Bonds was a TV series on Amazon. Thanks, Friday. Metro Theatre, yeah. A lot of the old school cinemas have gone now, though they did preserve the Capitol and the State Theatre in Sydney. by showing adult films in the 70s. And they kept on going until they were reinvented as stage theatres. So there are a lot of big musicals and other events showing at those two old grand flea pits. They are magnificent. The State Theatre in Sydney is the most grandiose and beautiful theatre I've seen anywhere. Do a Google search on the State Theatre, Sydney, Australia, when you get a chance. And you'll see that marble staircase, which keeps getting used for TV shows and ads and movies. It's just a magnificent space. Jim Vim says, Robert Bresson's Four Nights of a Dreamer. Any info released? I don't know. D. Lee says, I highly recommend Memoir of a Snail and Flow. I saw some of the original maquettes from Memoir of the Snail. They were down at the Sun in Yarraville. They had a display of the original puppet maquettes from Memoir of a Snail, and they look beautiful. I think I got a couple of shots of them with my phone, but I'd have to go through all the photos to find them. I do want to see Flow, and I will watch that with Sal, because a movie about cats is going to be something that's very much her jam. Tom says, are there any flea pit movie houses in Melbourne? Not anymore. Occasionally the Astor shows things that are very flea pitty. I mean, I saw Terrorvision there with Cinemaniacs a couple of months ago. So the spirit's still there, but there are no dedicated flea pits anymore. Ramzar says, Ridley Scott's three best movies are his first three, Duelist, Alien, and Blade Runner. During those years, he also did some ads for Chanel No. 5 and music videos for Roxy Music. Yeah, like I said, a lot of people love and respect Ridley Scott as a filmmaker. I don't see it. That's just my opinion. Jim Boom says, nothing more sad than classic cinemas closed down. Death of culture. Yeah, if I had Elon Musk money, all I would do, well, not all I would do, but a lot of what I would do would be finding old flea pits that have been turned into something else, buying them up and turning them back into flea pits. And I wouldn't care if they didn't make a profit, but I would show a whole bunch of very cool classic movies there and create a whole film watching culture for a lot of people. The Rich Two says, the Prince Charles Cinema in London is at threat of closure. Legendary place. Citing developers as usual want to build apartments. Of course they do, because real estate agents ruin cities. Sydney, my hometown, beautiful Sydney, the most beautiful city in Australia, got taken over by real estate agents, and now the people who were born there and grew up there and have history there. And my family's been in Sydney since the 1850s. They're ruining it, and people can't afford to live in that city, and that's a crime. Ramsar said, Ridley Scott's past his peak. He's in his 80s, so allow that. Dalek Lives Matter. I'm watching Flow tonight. I can recommend a puppet animation called Mad God. Very dark and intriguing. That's a Phil Tippett one. I've seen it. Kingsway and Bloor Cinemas exist in Toronto. Docs and reviews still thrive. All credit to George R.R. Martin, too, because one of the things he does with his Game of Thrones money is renovates and opens Encore cinemas and retro houses. I've met George a couple of times. He's a very nice, very quiet guy. And all credit to him. When he hit the money, he put it into something that supports his local community, his local culture. And I've got nothing but respect for the man. The Electric's closed in Birmingham. That's a shame. Flo has one cat, but there's a good selection of other animals too, says Dealey. Cool. Peter, thank you very much. Appreciate the bump, mate. And you have a great week. You have a great week too. Stay warm when it gets cold. Richard says, I just want to say how lovely it was to see the park you visited and the lighted up animals and balls. The spider looked cool. Yeah, our local park, Wyndham Park, is just so great. And having that Indigenous input and that Indigenous viewpoint on how to make a park and not try to make it a rectilinear box with stuff in it means that it is a treasure. And then every year, the local council, for absolutely nothing, does a light festival in this park in the gully beside the river. I love it. Dalek Lives Matter says, Ridley Scott's Napoleon was a joke apart from the battle scenes. I do want to see it, but I'm not in love with seeing it. Cinematheque Ontario now, Bill Light Show. is expensive for yuppies only. That's a shame. Still can't figure out why George lives in New Mexico, says DB Cooper. He's lived there since before he hit big. When he was writing science fiction stories and novels, he lived in Albuquerque with Paris, his partner, and they are great together. They're one of the cutest couples you'd ever want to see. And he lives there and he likes living there. D. Lee says, developers want to turn eight wonders of the world into apartments. Absolutely. And the Richie Two says, Tarantino famously bought the New Beverly and preserved it. He's also done another cinema recently, I believe. Jim Bim says, amen to that, Terry. Culture, indie theatres rule. YTS site, great for streaming free films. I'll keep that in mind. Though I've got more films that I can possibly watch at the moment, which is a happy place to be. So, any final questions before we end this wonderful live stream, which has gone some interesting places? I'm sorry if I've cut people off on the politics stuff, but I wanted to keep this live stream as clean as I could from that, and as a respite from that, as a resting place from the mad shit that's going on elsewhere. Maybe we're lagging on there. Ramsar said, Malcolm McDowell starred in nearly 300 movies. He's 81 now. What was that other one you mentioned? Get Crazy, it's called. You got to see Get Crazy. It's had a Blu-ray release, and I've got the Blu-ray the moment it came out. It was out back in the 80s and particularly the 80s. It was our go-to New Year's Eve movie that we always watched at New Year's Eve parties. Dalek Lives Matter. Have you heard there's a sequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood directed by David Fincher? Yeah. They're doing the Cliff Booth story and a Cliff Booth sequel. I think it'll be interesting. And Fincher's so good a director, it's not going to be a bad film. Franny says, thanks for no politics. I need a break. I can appreciate that, Franny. And I will talk about politics inevitably at some stage in the future. But I wanted to keep just this one clean. Scott says, happy birthday. Thank you very much. It's in 10 days, but I appreciate the good wishes. The Richard Cheers says, so much for me stopping by for 5 minutes. Happy approximate birthday. My pleasure. Thank you. Too much drama. My site is proper, says Jimmy. I appreciate that. And Tom agrees with me. Get Crazy is great. Rams asked founder Get Crazy in 1983. Jim Bim says, remember Don's Party cult film on CDN TV? I believe it may be on Broly as well. Have I picked my profile for Science Fiction Saturday? Not yet, Dean. I'm giving myself a couple of days off after this. I've got to get the Wednesday video out. And I've got the Friday video for the other channel in the can. But I haven't started working on Science Fiction Saturday yet. Jim Bim says, happy Born Day, Terry. What upcoming films are you champing a bit to see? I want to see the Superman one. I want to see Fantastic Four First Steps. They're my superhero ones that I want to see. I am going to go see Novocaine this week. I'm looking forward to seeing a Minecraft movie because I'm going with my nephew, which has nothing to do with the movie. There are a couple of things like the Megan sequel I'd be interested in seeing. There are some films that I might see, but I'm not particularly keen on seeing. But I'm just going to see what the year brings. I haven't really researched too much. But I think we're at that stage where all the people who spent extra time writing their scripts during the pandemic when they couldn't get them sold, all of those are starting to come in and being delivered. And that's what I like, because the quality of a lot of films that are coming out now are purely determined by the fact that the writers were in lockdown when they wrote the scripts years ago, and they're now starting to really harvest those crops. Jimmy says, yeah, 10,000 Things is Dr. T. Yeah, I like that one as well. But yeah, I mean, we're living in a good moment because of that time that writers have had to really get their scripts right. It's one of the few upsides to the pandemic, and I'm glad that they did. And our future as film buffs is assured. So we're almost at the end now. So it's time to knock that naughty clock that says it's time to go. Thank you to everybody that's been part of this. Thank you to the people who've donated. It's just so much fun doing these live streams. and the mental exercise of doing it is so good that I didn't even drink my can of coffee that's warming on the radiator. Friday says, picked up Queen Live Rock Montreal and Live Aid after watching YouTube videos of Sin Tribesmen watching Bohemian Rhapsody and Live Aid. Great to see how we're different but the same. Yeah, absolutely. Music joins us together and culture joins us together. Jim Mims says, script writers and music can unite us. Absolutely, 100%. Anyway, I'm going to end the stream now. You guys will take care. And thanks again for everything you give to the channel and to me. And watch some good movies. I will continue to um, do the movie stuff and also do the travel stuff. And I'm enjoying the hell out of things. Catch you next time.